Hi, I'm Len Epp from Leanpub, and in this episode of the Front Matter podcast, I'll be interviewing Mike Gold. Based in Austin, Mike has been developing software for over 20 years and worked as a consultant in the banking, manufacturing, healthcare, finance, and military industries. He has also written over 200 articles on .NET and C# technology, which you can find on csharpcorner.com. You can follow him on Twitter at msgold2011 and find him on LinkedIn at Mike Gold Austin. Mike is the author of the Leanpub book, Creating a Wordle Game in React and TypeScript. Mike wrote the book to help a developer through the process of building a React app in order to familiarize the developer with some of the important features of React and TypeScript in a fun and easy-to-follow experience. The book goes step by step through some of the widely used concepts in React. In this interview, we're going to talk about Mike's background and career, professional interests, and his book. So thank you very much, Mike, for being on the Front Matter podcast.
Thanks for having me, Len. Appreciate it.
I always like to start these interviews by asking people for their origin story. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you grew up and how you got into sort of computers and technology.
Sure. Yeah, I was talking to you earlier about Simon Brown. It was funny. I was listening to him, and his origin story sounded like my origin story. And then I remember he said, "Oh, he's from Jersey." I said, "Oh, I'm also from Jersey." But then I realized he meant Jersey near London, and I meant Jersey Piscataway, like Jersey. Anyway, so yeah, my origin story. I started on an Apple II computer when I was young. My dad got me one, and I learned on that. And I remember listening to Simon Brown's stories, typing in programs and games from magazines. I did the same thing. Early on with computers, I also tried writing my own games. Back then it was BASIC, and later it was other languages. But so I started with that. I also took a high school computer course. I remember writing a high school adventure game. That was one of my first games where you would walk through the school and collect various school artifacts for that class. So later on, I of course went into engineering. I was at electrical engineering all the way to the master's program, and then I went out and got a job. And at that time, jobs were hard to come by. I mean, I to be honest with you, I couldn't get a job as undergrad because it was so bad. It was like the late 80s, and it was a hard time for engineers to pick up jobs. But after my master's, I managed to score a job with DuPont and doing Mac programming, which was an interesting learning experience for sure. But I did some Mac programming. It was a molecular biology. They had DuPont had a gene sequencing machine, and my job was to help write software that would help track the genes going through what's called an electrophoresis gel. Basically, they zap a gel with 1200 volts, and it pushes DNA strands down to it, and they read the ends of those strands, and the larger strands, are pulled down faster by gravity, so they get sequenced first, and in this way you can actually sequence a gene in order. And I still use that technology today, and I got to be part of that, which was really cool. Later on, I moved to actually doing engineering work for building centrifuges, which was kind of neat. It was embedded system work, and it was programming different kinds of microcontrollers. And I helped, you could build another product just by changing the code slightly, which was my first foray into generating products quickly with code. You could just take a feature out of the software, and then that piece of hardware wouldn't work, and you can have different upgrades. And so that's what I did for a few years, help build centrifuges or fix bugs in centrifuges. After that, I decided it's time to break out on my own. So I had this idea for building a tool for state diagrams. And I built this tool. At the time, I built it in Visual C++, Microsoft technology, and it allowed you to draw these state diagrams, and it would generate code from them. And after that, I started reading about UML I know Simon Brown talked about it in his interview a lot. And, I became very immersed in you, very interested in it, because I realized it was a way to model software, architect software without writing code and sort of giving a picture version of the design. And a picture is 1,000 words, even with software. So it was very useful. And I hooked up with a guy named Richard Felsinger, who was a trainer, and we worked together. I would sell my software and he'd use it in his training classes. And eventually I took it further. I built a whole UML tool that drew everything from class state and other kinds of diagrams and sequence diagrams. And then I started heavily marketing it through magazines like Dr. Dobb. And eventually my sister and brother-in-law joined the business and it became a full business. We were selling this product for a while until I think it was around the time that, heard of a tool called Rational Rows, but they were the leaders in that space. They invented UML. They also had a tool that they sold. Well, they ended up selling to IBM. And soon after that, the market for UML tools sort of died. There's no real great explanation. I think people started these rapid frameworks. They felt they didn't really need architecture as much. But it was a fun adventure. The tool did everything from generate code to reverse engineer code in like 6 languages. And it was a lot of fun writing that tool. And after that, I decided it's time to go back to work, to go into consulting. And that's what I've been doing since. I've been heavily consulting, mostly in the Microsoft technology space. In fact, I was a Microsoft MVP for a while because I've written articles on C# Corner, many, many articles, and on many topics of various technologies in Microsoft, as well as some fun games. One of my fun games was I recreated Space Invaders. And when I say recreated, I mean I recreated it completely, all the graphics, the sounds. I found a site to help me do that. And, I wrote an article on that. And at the time, those articles were doing well. I mean, thousands of people have read them. And, it felt good having, that people were really enjoyed those articles. And so I kept writing them. But then I stopped writing after C# Corner a while and concentrated more on getting consulting off the ground. And that's mostly my story. So.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. That's really great. For anyone who's interested, check out Mike's sort of experience on LinkedIn, and you'll see like that, just how many, I think that there's like sort of 36 entries or something like that. Some of them overlapping, and it's just this really incredible, interesting, like diverse array of experiences and things you've worked on. I'm really curious, actually. So I saw that, so you studied electrical engineering at Cornell.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people listening now might be like, how could it possibly have been hard to get a job as an engineer? Because nowadays, of course, there's this sort of notorious kind of battle for talent and stuff like that. Right. And a lot of people think, there's been various recessions, right? And things like that. Was that what was going on at the time?
That's exactly what was happening. There was a recession. It was only a short period, but at the time coming out of school, I had trouble. I went through many interviews and didn't get a job. And, there was always these lulls in the job market at certain times, and that was one of them. And later on, after the .com bust, and I was in Manhattan, I think, at the time, and that it was hard to get a job at that point as well. But
there are these various sort of punctuation points, as it were.
Right. You get these like dips in but they don't usually last long in this technology field. It doesn't seem like it is. There's just so much opportunity in technology that it bounces back in one area or another.
Yeah, but it is very frustrating to be in the kind of cohort of, if you went to university, cohort of graduates when you sort of graduate in that moment and you're like, why me? Yeah. There was definitely
those questions in my mind for sure.
And so you studied electrical engineering, but you ended up being a programmer in a lot of your work anyway. You said your dad bought you the Apple II. And so you were more or less self-taught in programming?
Yeah, I would say a lot of it. I was self-taught. I mean, I did take some university classes. Most of my university classes were electrical engineering, and my master's was also electrical. But I I did take some computer science classes, and some more memorable ones are data structures, which even to this day, I find a good solid foundation for understanding how to use those structures in programming. And another was, I took one other computer course. I didn't take a whole array of them, but I took assembly language programming, which was kind of fun. You had to write I remember the final was you had to write the game of life in assembly, and we all tried to get the fastest score. And some guy from France got it down to 6 seconds or some ridiculously, or wow. 6 milliseconds or whatever it was at the time. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That actually gives me the opportunity to ask a version of a question that I asked many times on this podcast in the past, which is, if you were starting out now in 2022, this will probably come out in 2023. But if you were starting out now as sort of like a, sort of young person with the intention of having a career in technology and programming, would you do a full university degree?
I heard you ask that question to Simon, and that's a good question. I think I probably still would. And I think let me give the reason. A degree, I mean, it's, and I don't agree with the logic behind this, but a degree in a lot of companies or places, they look for, that's like a ticket. Like if you get your degree, then if you go through and get the whole thing, they look for that the HR departments in large companies. I think they even weed out that, which is ridiculous, because if you're qualified, like I as a hiring manager, I would, if someone had the skills and talking to them, they knew what they were doing, I wouldn't care. But I think there are policies in place that make it harder if you don't complete those degrees. So I think I'm happy that I did, and I didn't drop out and start my entrepreneurship, whatever, 2 years in. I'm glad I finished what I started. So, because there was still opportunity even after that there's always opportunities to try out things.
Yeah, it's sort of tricky, I don't know, environment when it comes to kind of getting hired, right? In so many sort of ways, and especially, and it's especially daunting for the sort of recent graduate and things like that. But we now live in the age where there's kind of algorithms that
right.
look at applications, and they don't
even make it to the person with
yeah,
at that point, which is
exactly.
sad.
And they might. I mean, I know I looked at some of the in a former life, I was an investment banker, and I remember applying to some of the banks that you worked for, they'd be like, there was a set of East Coast private schools, a specific set of them that you would like, and I mean high schools, that you could indicate that you'd attended in your application. And it was like, wow, what a lesson in like,
oh yeah,
how these algorithms sort of weed things out or bring things to the top. But that being said, for anyone listening who's sort of like, facing this choice, or maybe didn't go to university, I mean, tons of people that I've interviewed on the podcast as well are like, you don't need to go to university at all. I'm a hiring manager. And, for people who sort of do hiring where it's not sort of passed through an algorithm, and even sometimes when it is, it actually doesn't always matter. It's not always the case.
That's true.
Yeah, you're screwed.
Especially the smaller companies where you're actually talking to the human who's going to hire you, right?
Yeah.
It's a different story. I think, people that are technologists, we look for people that really have the experience in doing certain things, and not so much that degree doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. And I think, and in the age of kind of GitHub and, open source and stuff like that, if you've done a bunch of, I mean, one of the sort of the main things that people see to get hired, like do a bunch of projects, do them in public, deliver something. And that's like, that's just a really great way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And write, for example, if you can.
Right. That's true. Actually, writing is certainly, I know in the early days when I was writing for C# Corner, it definitely got the attention of some hiring managers. And then they would say, oh, I read your article on the oscilloscope in GDI plus, or, which I always found kind of cool. So,
yeah, it's just on that note. Before we go on to talk about your book, Leanpub used to be bootstrapped, so we had consulting clients, and one of our most lucrative clients, found us by pirating my co-founder Peter's book,
Gosh.
or books. Yeah. And sort of, sort of pirated it, read them and was like, wow, I really want to work with you. But having books out there, even if they're free in one way or another,
there's still an advertisement, right?
There's still an advertisement. Exactly. Having stuff out there is really great. And sort of speaking of having stuff out there, so you've got this great fun Wordle book.
Oh yeah. I have it right here. Actually, it's yeah.
Oh, great! Got it.
You can't see it backwards there, but
no. I'm seeing it.
Oh, you're actually seeing it forwards.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it backwards. So yeah, I have the creating a Wordle game in React and TypeScript.
So yeah, I was wondering if you could talk about the origin story of that book and
the origin. My sister and I and my wife and my son, we have this thread where we all play Wordle, and I thought, this would be a really cool game to write a book on, or it'd be actually cool to write the application. And I thought, what would be even more fun is to write a tutorial that teach people the sort of patterns in React using TypeScript to create something fun. And and I actually wrote this book for fun. It's like, okay, let's get back into it, because I used to do this for C# Corner quite a bit, and said, well, Leanpub does books. Why don't I try writing? And it's funny because this book, I don't know if I told you this, but this book got the attention of A-Press, and they contacted me they saw it on Leanpub. They wanted to publish it, but they wanted to help me get a co-author, and they wanted to juice up the pages. And I thought, I just kind of did this for fun. I don't want to get it out there. So I told them, no, we're just going to sell it. We're going to self-publish it and do it ourselves. So, and I have worked with A-Press in the past, but this was an opportunity to self-publish again. And interesting story, when I was with C# Corner, and I think this was even before Leanpub existed, we did a self-published book through my company, Microgold, through people all over the world, each writing a chapter, and we published it. I got it in Barnes & Noble. I went through the whole process, Baker and Taylor, and at the time was Ingram, and in learning how to do that and distribute the book. The only problem, it turned out that the distributor was a crook, and they stole the Amazon. It was really it's a bad story, but none of our authors got paid because this person ran off. We couldn't find her. I had talked to other publishers that were in her catalog, and so lesson learned that you got to make sure you're with a reputable publisher. And but anyway, the book was still fun, and it still ended up in Barnes and Noble, and the rest are sitting in my garage. But at one point we did have a publicist who pushed them out. So and that book was called Visual C#. So that was my first foray into self-publishing. But I thought, hey, let's do it again with Leanpub's got this great platform, and you can actually write. You write your entire book and publish it, and look and see the PDF right away. And that's really cool. And so I got started. And then, you guys let me into your Amazon program, which now it's on Amazon. And these guys, I gotta tell you, they got this book out in a week. I'm not lying. Leanpub got this book on Amazon, published, ISBN, everything in record time. I was thrilled, and it's out there. But anyway, more about the book. So, book isn't a very long book, but it is a tutorial, and if you are familiar with React, it's a good fun thing to go through, and the source code's available too. There's a link in the book to guide you through that as well.
Yeah, it's really great. It's been really fun. And there's a section in there. But so for those, maybe for those, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone will know what Wordle is, but Wordle is kind of a mastermind style game for guessing a word, right? And so there's sort of, I think, is it 6 or 5? I just did today's, but is it 6 or 5 attempts that you get?
Yeah, you get 6 attempts.
6 attempts. And so it's basically what you'll see is if you go to it, the New York Times bought it, and it was really funny. Like, I think the creator created it to sort of like as something, a fun sort of gift for his wife, and then got bought for some kind of low seven figure amount. And then because it became so popular, but basically you'll see like 6 rows of 5 boxes and you try and guess a word. And it'll show you if the letter is a letter that is included in the word, and then I think it shows up as orange or something like that, and then it's green if it's the correct letter in the correct spot. And then there's sort of different settings. Like there's a hard setting where if you guessed a letter, you have to use it in the next guess. And if it's green and you guessed it in the same place, you have to guess it in the same place and stuff like that.
It's like if you've ever played Mastermind. If that was an old game that was put out by, I think it was Parker Brothers, and it's exactly the same kind of thing, except this guy kind of combined it with letters instead of colors, and I mean it's definitely a great idea, and to expand that mastermind concept and create almost like this puzzle that gives you similar clues, and you can easily create those puzzles. So,
do you have a go-to first word?
A go-to first word?
Yeah.
Oh yes, I do actually. So my son actually had a go-to first word, Soleil, which isn't, I've never heard this word, S-A-L-E-T, but apparently it's a word. I think it's some 17th century French something or other. I don't know, but apparently it's the best word to pick. My go-to first word is slate, which is the same letters,
right,
but spelled slightly different. And that's the word I usually pick. Unless I'm feeling different, I'll sometimes pick words like train. Those are my two first go-to. And if I don't get it with slate, if slate doesn't show any letters, I think I go to house or something like that, or if it shows just the E or something.
Yeah, that's funny. I use my first word is just kind of for fun is thane, which is like a Viking word for Lord, basically.
Oh,
Thane. So you get, TH and E. And,
and you got the most important vowels there, or the most frequent vowels. So and you get the TH.
Yeah, and that's a good one. If nothing shows up, then I use proud. So you get an R, O, and U in there as well. So.
Right, so it knocks out most of the vowels. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever? I
think that's a good strategy. I think it is like if you try to knock out the vowels first, like if you can. That's my.
Have you ever got it on the second try?
Yes, and if you get it on the second try, it's just pure luck. I mean, I have never just one though. Never mind read the thing.
Yeah, the most proud I've ever been was I got none on the first one, none on the second one, and it's like when I done Thane and Proud, and it's like wow, what could be left, and then I got it perfectly on the third try.
Like a word like I don't know, nymph or some word that you would never think of vowels, but yeah.
But it's just such a great idea because you feel so like satisfied when you get it that way.
Exactly. Yes. And they make it, if you ever played the New York Times version, they make it, really fun where they, make you say splendid if you got it, make you feel good about it.
Actually, I'm just curious talking about Wordle now. Is that what your book is partly about? But at the time when it was first created, before it got acquired, you could actually download the full word list.
Yes, and I think this you can find it online. I think if you get my link will have in the book has links to the word list, and you can use the entire Wordle word list, which is not exactly the same as you'd think. It's not only 5-letter words. Like they don't do plurals in the word list, so you won't find. I'm trying to think of a word like bills or something. You won't find those in the word list. So I think the list is somewhere around 2,000. The official list is something like 2,000 unique words. So.
Yeah, it's super fun to actually to sort of. I've downloaded it at the time when it sort of became popular just to look at, and it was neat just sort of scrolling through today's word. So I'm not giving this is no spoiler because this won't come out for a while, but today's word was usual.
Yes,
and
that was hard. I struggled with it today.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you can it's one thing I love about the game is that you can be there like I know this is probably an ordinary word that I use all the time, but I was stuck with like AL at the end, and then
I was same with me.
What could that be?
Yeah, I got stuck the same way. I was trying comment. I had an SAL somewhere, and I still couldn't get it right. That was a tricky one.
Yeah, I had the S as well.
It wasn't your usual word.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but you already, and so just going on to talk about your experience writing. So, how did you actually get into writing? You know, your posts for C Sharp.
Yeah, when I was working closely with C Sharp Corner, I was back and forth with Mahesh. I just put a post up for fun. I think it was, I can't remember what my first post was. It was something graphic related, I think. And then Mahesh, who was the owner of the site, or probably still is, he sent it back to me, and he encouraged me to write more. And then I really found that I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed getting feedback. And so I just kept writing, and I broached many topics. It was fun to just not only explore Microsoft's technology and the .NET framework, but I explored things like artificial intelligence. I wrote a few articles on genetic algorithms and some probabilistic algorithms. And so you could, the nice thing, C# Core, you could write about just about anything you wanted to. So I went across, even wrote some articles on hardware where, I wrote a solar panel measure that graphed, the daylight, just fun things like that. And I would get feedback from because they were popular articles, I would get feedback from some of the hardware people, a guy named Al Williams, who's a big writer for electronic magazines. And I wrote a review for Robert Martin on his book, Clean Code, and because of his exposure, he thanked me. So it was kind of cool, because they really gave me access to some of the leaders in the field and talking to them. So.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, if you can get a bit of traction and a bit of attention, one of the reasons, you end up writing sort of hundreds of articles is because people are paying attention to them and you get feedback and they like it. And it's one of the great rewards for writing and publishing. Did you, I'm just curious because you wrote so many, did you do like one a week? Did you have a schedule or something like that?
I didn't really have a set schedule, but I tried to write like at least one every 2 weeks. And I actually dropped off after a few years. I wasn't writing nearly as often because I think most of my time was spent doing consulting at that point. But for a while, I was writing a lot of them, quite a few, actually. So but I remember how much I enjoyed it. So that's why I came back and did this book. And there'll probably be more to come.
Yeah, so you eventually alighted upon Leanpub.
Yes.
And yes. What writing mode did you use? Actually, I feel bad that I didn't double check that.
Which writing mode, as in like the Markdown or?
No, like on Leanpub. So we have we have like the browser, and then we have Dropbox and GitHub and. I wrote it. You mean how did I write it, or? I'll just check right now. I'm just asking the question badly. Oh, okay. So you I found it right now. So yeah, you chose our in browser writing mode.
Yes. Yeah. But what I did was, and this I recommend to anybody, I downloaded a tool called Visual Code. I actually didn't download it. I used it on my job. And Visual Code has a plugin for Markdown. And I used that. And then what I did was I then pasted that Markdown into your web browser. That's how I wrote the book.
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't know if I've ever. I mean, I'm sure that actually you're probably not the first person to do that, but you're the first person I've talked to, I think, who did that. That's a really
it's very useful because Visual Code really it translates. They have a plugin that translates that Markdown, and you can see it side by side as you're typing, and you can also see the code, how that looks in the. And yeah, that's the way I was able to check and see the images and see how it, No,
that's really great. That's really great. You mentioned that you got Leanpub got your book on Amazon. So for anyone listening, we've got this thing that we introduced recently called Leanpub Author Services, with a rather grand title. And basically this was in response to, for many years, actually, and I'll be asking you this question shortly, but the last question I always ask on these podcast interviews is if there's one thing you hated about Leanpub that we were shouting at the screen all the time about that we could fix for you, if there was one thing we could build for you, one feature we could build for you, what would you ask for? And often people ask for what I sort of came to call the magic button, which is like, I've written my book in one of Leanpub's writing modes. Can I just click a button and get a print book up on Amazon? And we sort of finally decided to offer. We sort of offered a version of that many moons ago, but we're now offering it again. And the idea is if you've written your book on Leanpub and if you've published it and it's done, then we've got a button you can click basically, and it costs a few $100, but then we'll correspond with you, but we'll do everything for you to get your book in hardcover and paperback and Kindle edition up on Amazon. And the sort of like this is all stuff, and we're very explicit about this. This is all stuff that you could totally do on your own if you wanted to, but not everybody wants to do that. A lot of people are like, wow, for just like, a few $100, I can just like not think about it and it'll be up there and you'll take care of everything for me. And so thank you very much, Mike, for being the very first user. You were the earliest of early adopters. And we were super interested in sort of like how that would work out. Like, when you signed up, we're like, okay, like, let's see. And it worked great.
It really worked out well. I mean, I can't believe how quickly, as I said, Leanpub company got it up, got the book up on Amazon in Kindle form with hardcover art and all this stuff that it would have taken me a month to do, or months and full time. I mean, or whatever. I just wouldn't have known what I was doing. So I was really thankful that they were able to offer that service.
Yeah, no,
I think the next service you guys though need to offer is some kind of marketing program. I think, or even partner with a marketing company. But that would like complete because that's I think the only thing that really publishing companies, have, that you don't. And
yeah, that's great.
I don't. But there are marketing firms out there, but I have a feeling that, it would be, that would be my only hot button is that, I'm sure authors, once they write their book and want to, if they want to sell them, they need ways to do that. So
yeah, you've gone ahead and answered the question.
Yeah.
If there was one more thing we could build for you, what would you ask? Yeah. You're not the first person to ask for that. I can try to go ahead and try and answer. So the main answer is when it comes to marketing, I mean, we've been doing this podcast for about 10 years, and sort of this has been kind of our main kind of how can we help market your book is like publish podcast episodes and stuff like that. Right. But just this year, we kind of got religion a little bit on like, we really need to be doing like, instead of just being, coding book generation stuff kind of nerds, we actually needed to sort of do more to get attention to authors and books and stuff like that. And play a little bit more of the role of the conventional publisher, right? Because the idea is, look, like a lot of people who are self-publishers, they're self-published authors. They love writing. They love the subjects that they write about. And they're like, but I'm not a marketer. And maybe I don't even enjoy self-promotion, right? And so the role that the sort of company plays is like to be the medium or the conduit. So it's like it's the company that's promoting you, not you promoting yourself. And that's actually a very different vibe. And so what we've done now is we've got these new initiatives. So we're going to be doing these Leanpub, what we call Leanpub launch videos. So we've done 3 of them so far.
Oh, excellent.
Which is like, we're finally doing what everybody in the book publishing industry has been doing forever, which is book launches. But basically, if you go to leanpub.com/launch, you can fill out a form and apply if you're a Leanpub author and we're doing them not just for like publishing a book for the first time, but if you're publishing a major new version, because of course we do lean publishing, right? And so if you're publishing a major new version, you can do another launch. So you can have many launch videos for the same book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. So if anyone's listening, please, and you're a Leanpub author, please apply to do one of those.
There's one other thing. I know that there's 2 other platforms. I think it's Barnes and Noble and something called Chaos something. I can't remember that Leanpub could offer, I mean, as they're growing this program to offer to some of these distributors.
Yes. So we've started our Leanpub author services with Amazon. We may offer distribution to other services in the future. Part of the problem there, though, is like kind of like, there is Amazon is the easiest to work with.
Oh yeah, no question.
And so it's kind of like, and when you start, like, I mean, in the self-publishing world, I don't know if you read self-publishing blogs and stuff like that, but there's like the kind of like, there's these terms of like putting all your eggs in one basket or going wide. And we sort of do typically recommend going wide, which is publishing on lots of different platforms. But at the same time, there's always this sort of cost benefit of like,
right.
All the overhead, is it really worth it to sort of be up?
Right, because if Amazon sells 90% of the books, then the others don't really matter.
This is why all the big publishers are on Amazon themselves, book publishers as well. But we're also going to be doing, sort of explainer videos to get stuff out there. And we're actually going to be doing Leanpub author videos. So someone contacted us with like, hey, here's how I do coupons. And we're like, hey, we should have a playlist on YouTube of like people can submit videos about like,
oh, that's a great idea.
Self-publishing. Yeah. And so again, we're it's not self-promotion in the same way it normally would be, right? It's kind of like, oh, now it's a Leanpub author video. So if you go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Leanpub, you'll see I've got a little intro there where I talk about the various kind of series that we've got going, but that is what we're doing to sort of offer sort of as in-house kind of marketing services to authors. And but when it comes to offering kind of, and those are all free. When it comes to offering paid marketing, though, we may do something on that eventually. There's a couple of tricky elements to that, though. One of which is, I mean, you mentioned getting scammed, and offering kind of paid marketing services is something that, like, not everyone who offers that to self-published authors is a scammer, but all scammers offer that.
Yes.
So like when you've got to be really careful. And Leanpub has a lot of goodwill because we built it up over the years and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But you've got to be.
That's why I'm thinking if you guys figure out a way to do it, people will trust you, right? Where the ones that are out there now are like call centers. They're trying.
Oh yeah, I got kind of on a list once. They called my parents, if you would believe it or not, multiple times. Yeah, telling them, "Oh, we want to publish a book by your son," and it's gross. But yeah, no. That's a really interesting suggestion, and we did sort of entertain the idea of paid Facebook ads, for example. And the principle would be the same, right? It's like, I don't want to have to learn about Facebook ads. I don't want to have to learn about Twitter ads or whatever it is. You guys just take care of it. Here's some money. And actually one thing I should mention as well is that in addition to being able to just pay for our Leanpub author services, with a credit card, you can actually bid on them using unpaid royalties that you've already earned from your book. This is a feature that we have as well for anyone listening. So your book can actually become kind of self-funding that way, which is cool. super interesting, we think, and kind of popular with authors. And also actually when it comes to marketing, we have our I don't know if you actually know about this, but we have we have weekly sales and monthly sales that we do.
See that, and I'm definitely considering doing some of that.
Yeah, so you can opt in for free by going to your book pricing page or your bundle or your course track, and you can then sort of set the discount amount that the maximum discount amount that you'll allow us to do. That gets you on the list. Oh, that's totally free, but you can actually pay for a sponsored spot that goes at the top of the newsletter, and then you also get on what we call the shelf, which is sort of a prominent display on our homepage, stuff like that. So we do offer that, and our weekly sale reaches about 20,000 people, and our monthly sale, I think, ticked over 60,000.
Okay, that's a nice size list.
Yeah, it's a pretty good size list. We wish it were bigger, but they do grow. Not as much as we wish they would, but that's our job to sort of market that as well. But yeah, no, thanks very much for that feedback, and that's definitely something that, like, when we're getting these signals, from people that, like, we want to do the writing, we want to do the thinking, and we're happy to do videos and stuff like that, but we also want to pay you guys to do some paid marketing for us on various channels out there. So that's definitely something that we'll consider. Cool. Mike, thank you very much for being on the Front Matter podcast and for being a Leanpub author. And thank you very much again for being the sort of, earliest of early adopters for our Leanpub author services.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Len. Thank you. And thanks for all Leanpub has done, really.
Thanks very much.